a head coach was fired, if a major injury happened. Um, I don't know. How did you do yours, Cole? How did you format yours?
I know mine pretty similar. My main focus was obviously, like you said, the expectations going into the season. I went and looked at their projected win total from ESPN at the start of the season, and the other thing that I looked really heavily at was how much their rookies produced for them that year, and their off-season moves. Did they bring anybody in that was super beneficial for the team? Did they bring in anybody that kind of splashed that was unexpected? So kind of like the front office moves. I did look at the report card ranking. I didn't play that super heavy into it. More of just like a look into the team and look into the front office. And if there was anything where I was on the fence, I kind of used the report card to break the tie, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. And as we're going through these teams, if a team has made a move recently, there have been a lot of releases of the recording of this video. Many players have been released. A couple big trades have already happened, and we'll cover them as we go through. Um, but I'll go ahead and kick us off with the Cardinals. I gave them an F. I was one of the few that had them as a dark horse for a playoff push, playoff contender, and they just completely dropped the ball. I know that Kyler Murray's injury really did derail them. Whether you believe in how talented he is or not, Kyler is an All-Pro level quarterback when he's healthy. Um, but this was still just a disaster on both sides of the ball. Um, and you'll see throughout this, Cole, I was pretty strict on a lot of these teams.
Mhm.
So I don't, we'll see. What
Yeah.
would you give them as well?
I I feel like there was a little bit of a mix for me between whether I was strict or not, but I did also give Arizona an F this year. I think a lot of things didn't go as planned, and Kyler Murray, obviously the injury. There was the speculation whether it was actually an injury, how hurt was he really, things like
Yeah.
that. I do think that he, obviously the injury affected him, and we had the injury to Marvin Harrison.
Yep.
I think he had his appendix removed in the middle of the season, which was just very
One of
interesting
those
thing that
yeah
happened that
freak
sidelined him
things
for
that
a
happen.
couple of weeks.
Yeah.
James Conner, like
Yep.
very early on in the season, just mutilated his leg. So I did give them an F, and obviously not everything is going to be their fault, but they did have. Oh my gosh, my players are running
How
into
did
each other.
he? How did he do that? That's crazy.
But yeah, I gave them an F as well.
Yeah, that's fair.
I forgot to mention Trey Benson. Obviously,
Yeah,
we'll both
they're
tell you
back up.
we're Florida State fans.
Yeah.
Didn't play like as soon as James Conner got hurt. Trey Benson gets hurt, and then he's supposed to come back in like week 14, and like, oh, it's next week. Oh, actually, it's gonna be next
Yeah.
week. Oh, it's gonna be next week.
And they're running
And so,
this like carousel of practice squad running backs for the rest of the
uh,
season. But the one true consistent that's been there consistent throughout the whole, I mean, the past couple of years is Trey McBride, and he has ascended. He has
a
been
dog.
spectacular, especially in fantasy. So yeah, if you want,
Oh,
we can move on
nice.
to the
Yep.
Titans. I gave these guys a
I,
C.
okay.
I feel like, and obviously this is a team that's picking really high, and it's maybe a little backwards logic to give them a respectable grade, but I really liked the little bit of flash that we saw from Cam Ward. I feel like he was really, he was in probably one of the worst situations in the league, with one of the
Hmm.
worst coaches in the league who did get fired. Um, but I think that outside and their young wide receivers, Ao Manor and DK, I feel like they were both very underrated this season, obviously because of the team they're on. But yeah, I think that was pretty respectable for them. But I understand if you
Yep.
went lower. So
I was just a tad bit lower with a D. Looking at the year in a whole, they started off the year, and I was kind of hoping for Ty J Spears to have a little bit of a bigger role. Was one of the things that really disappointed me. I
yeah,
love Ty J Spears. I've been watching him since Coastal Carolina. I think he's a good running back, and he's kind of just being held back a little bit. He started with the injury, and then he was, you know, Tony Pollard kind of solidifies himself as the guy that they liked there. Um, they were playing in a bad situation, like you said. The offensive line was bad, and it took Cam Ward a little while to get into his stride. Calvin Ridley missed a lot of time, and it really left basically like a rookie tight end and two rookie receivers to carry the load for the whole offense. And so very young team. I think a promising future, especially with the way that Cam Ward ended the season.
Yeah,
But just
yeah.
disappointing year overall for them.
Especially because of the hire of Salah, and they made that move for Jermaine Johnson as well, linking up
Hmm.
with Salah. So they have some consistency there on the defensive line, and obviously one of the greatest defensive minds in the league right now. So their future is very bright, and I really don't know where they're gonna go in the draft with their pick. I really thought they were going to go edge rusher, but now that they've traded for Jermaine, I'm thinking maybe they turn to offense. But it'll be interesting to see. So I'm liking what they've got going on right now.
I just got
Although
mossed. Yep.
you
We
got
can
a little,
we'll move to the team that traded Jermaine Johnson to
yeah,
the Tennessee Titans, the New York Jets. I gave this team also a D. While they did have the bright spot of Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall having solid seasons, um, just an overall disappointing year. Their defense wasn't able to stop very many people. Justin Fields was not the answer that they were hoping for. I mean, multiple games with like basically no passing yards. There was a couple games where we were under 100. Um, just not very productive. He didn't look very comfortable back there. I mean, it looked like he was running for his life, which is
yeah,
saying something considering the fact that their offensive line was pretty solid. And so, I
yeah,
mean, I think he
underrated.
was just yeah. So I gave him a D.
Yeah, I also gave them a D. I mean, they traded away so many people during the season, especially their big superstar names in Quentin Williams and Sauce Gardner, but they have really big draft capital. So it'll be very exciting to see what they do with it. Now it is the Jets, so we they don't have a really good track record when they have this kind of value. But
Yep.
then again, it's we're in a modern day with better technology, better scouting. You'd think anyways. So if I'm a Jets fan, I'm excited to see what they do with it. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it feels like one of those situations where Aaron Glenn and the staff could be out middle of the season if things aren't going well. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I failed to mention the fact that they hired eight or they fired eight of their assistants slash
yeah,
coordinators
they
like
did.
at the end of the coaching carousel, which was a big factor of just I think the overall grade being as low as it was for me.
Yeah, that's fair. And now we've got a team that's been stuck in poverty for the past 2 decades in the Raiders. This was the popular pick, I think, at the beginning of the season for the dark horse team, like somebody who made a bunch of moves in the offseason, or like one big move at least in addressing a quarterback with Geno Smith. Somebody who was slowly declining over the past 2 seasons, aside from that one 2023 season where I personally thought he was a top 15 to 12 quarterback. He was playing some really good ball, but he turned back the clock and not in a good way, and he had one of the worst career collapses I've seen in a while. He just forgot how to play football. I don't know if he was at the casinos too long in Las Vegas. I don't know, but he was terrible, and the Raiders were terrible before it. I was one of the few that was
Yeah.
high on the team. Because of being a Seahawks fan and how good he was playing these past couple of years. But yeah, this is an F. I don't know how you can have.
I
Uh,
I gave him a D. I was a little bit more on the positive side. Mainly the reason for it not being an F was literally just Ashton Genty. Obviously, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
he didn't have the season that we expected, but he was able to produce, and he kind of proved that he is the player that we hope that he can to be able to produce what he produced behind that offensive line and with that offensive ecosystem around him.
yep,
With and even some of the year he was playing with no Brock Bowers in the field to help with the
yep.
run blocking, and
And they
there's
traded
no eyes on
Jacoby.
anyone but him. Yeah, they traded
Yeah,
Jacoby.
yep,
I think something that was really disheartening for me watching the Raiders this year was they had two rookie wide receivers, and I mean the pathway was clear. They trade Jacoby. There's nobody else there, and Dante Thornton and Besh.
yeah.
Besh
Jack Best,
didn't
Best.
really. Yeah, it's his last name. Um, I have a hard time pronouncing, but they just were never really able to do anything, and so I think that um, kind of hurt their grade for me. Get out of there, Jordan. Get out of there, Jordan. Don't die.
Yeah, that's fair.
We'll move on to the Giants now. despite the 4-13 record, feel a little bit more on the positive side about the Giants. I'm gonna go somewhere around the C plus range. I think they drafted well. Cam Scadaboo, Jackson Dart, some good picks. I'm excited to see what this defense does with Abdul Carter there, Brian Burns on the other end. I think there's a lot of talent on both sides of the ball, and it's very young. We didn't get to see Malik Neighbors this year. That I think was very difficult for that offense to not have a true number one wide receiver there. Like I said, 4-13 records, so it's hard to be too positive. But you go into next year with the hiring of John Harbaugh, you have the number 5 pick in the draft with a chance to draft um, somebody elite there. One of those, I'm assuming they're going to go with one of these Ohio State defenders, whether it's Caleb Downs or Sonny Styles or Alvaro Reese, whoever's there at 5. I hope they pick up one of those guys. I think it'll be good for their team. And yes, I went with the C plus.
I was a little bit more harsh, but I feel like um I was a little I gave him a D. I feel looking back at it that this was a little too low, but um we knew that this was a bad team coming into the season, especially with all the mess that they were dealing with in the quarterback room to start with Russell Wilson and Jameis. And is Dart going to start week one? I mean, they spent a first round pick. Didn't they trade back into the first to get him? And
I believe so.
it's like if you went out and got this guy and you didn't believe in him to start the season, then why did you even trade up to get him? But eventually it worked out, and he ended up looking like he will be the guy there. It's obviously only one season, but um,
And we hope he can stop getting concussions.
yeah, and that
And
was an
miss
issue
tackles.
coming out of college as well, was how reckless he was as a runner. But he's a great runner. It's just dangerous when you have two guys like that in the backfield, in your starting running back and your starting quarterback, that are both very injury prone, especially also Malik Neighbors, who's not injury prone, but coming back off of a terrible, terrible injury. Like, it was worse than just an ACL tear. Like, he basically tore up his whole leg.
Yeah,
It was a really gruesome leg injury. So the fact that some people are saying he'll be back by week one next season, I don't know if I believe that, but
I think they'll start very slow, that whole
I
team.
I would not be surprised if he didn't play till week five next season. But at the same time, it's modern medicine, so he might take some horse tranquilizer and they'll have him back on the field. But yeah, I gave him a D. And speaking of teams that made some moves recently, as of right now, like 15 minutes before this recording, Bobby Okikuri was released. Um, I think it was a cap situation. But I really, and I was telling Cole this before the recording, I really don't know how many more Mike linebackers there are better than Bobby in the league right now. And I know a lot of Giants fans aren't really high on his performances recently. He's kind of running that his cred off of that one really good year he had a couple years ago. But I uh, I still don't know how you're gonna find a better replacement for a guy like that. To me, I don't know how you feel
I
about him,
maybe
but
that's where they go in the draft is that Mike linebacker. Maybe they go for somebody like Sonny Styles and hope that he can fill that gap. He had a great combine. He's super athletic, so I think he could be a good piece on that defense, combining with Abdul Carter and Brian Burns and sexy Dexter.
yeah.
So, a fun defense. I hope next year we'll see how they address that Mike linebacker situation. We can move on to Washington this year. I would say it has to be one of the biggest disappointments. I gave them a D. They finished the season 5-12. Jaden Daniels has like three different injuries, one of the most gruesome arm injuries I've ever seen in my life. In a game where some would say he probably shouldn't have even been in at that point.
Yep.
It was getting late in the game, and the coach faced a lot of scrutiny for it. So we'll see how he comes off of that. I think that he'll. I don't know how hard it is as far as recovery on that injury, um, but I think he'll be okay for next year. But as far as this year goes, obviously wasn't able to play much. The some of the pieces they brought in weren't able to produce as much as they hoped. I think Debo Samuel was a little bit of a disappointment. Terry McLaurin hurt most of the year, came back and immediately got hurt. I think like on his second catch of his first game back and missed a couple more weeks before he was able to come back and finish off the year. So not what they wanted after the way they ended last year with a hopeful young quarterback and uh, good outlook, but I ended up giving them a D.
And wasn't isn't Debo set to be released, or he is released, or they're talking about releasing him or something
I
like that?
I haven't seen anything come from like Adam Schefter or any of them guys, but I would assume the expectation is that he's not there next year.
And
Because
they
I know they,
released Marshawn Lattimore as well, who, if
yes,
you'll remember, they made a big trade for in the middle of the season. Um, and he just turned out
they
to
got some
not be
old.
the real answer there. But I gave them a little bit harsh of a grade. I know that Jaden was injured and he had a really terrible injury, but this was a team that if you watch football, you kind of expected to fall off. The last year's run was kind of a, I don't want to say fluke, but a very miraculous run in the sense of they peaked
Mhm.
at the right time of the season. Um, and it was kind of inevitable that no matter who made it to the NFC Championship game last year, everybody knew the Eagles were making it to the Super Bowl. So it didn't really matter. But they were a team that peaked really, really late into the season last year, who went on a really hot run, which was not just, it's just not replicable in um, with the formula they were using, especially when Jaden Daniels gets injured, especially when your best receiving option, Terry McLaurin, is like really the only other guy aside from Zach Ertz. Their offensive line just continues to get older. Their defense is just still not good. It hasn't been good in years. Their secondary is terrible, even with the addition of Marshawn. Um, so I gave them an F, even though I know I said context matters. Even if Jaden Daniels was in, like if he didn't get injured, maybe they win two more games. I don't I didn't believe in this team from the start of the year, and yeah, F.
Cleveland, we got Cleveland coming up. I give them a C for Cleveland. I'm just kidding. No, I did give them a C, but it doesn't stand for Cleveland. I guess in actual schools, C stands for like I don't actually know what it stands
Passing.
for.
I don't know.
Yeah, so, something around there. I think that the defensive side of the ball was the bright spot. Obviously, Miles Garrett breaking the sack record this year, Mason Graham, the rookie defensive tackle. One of the biggest aspects of this grade of a C for me was the fact that their rookies were all very, very good. They produced well, and my controller is dead. Oh no, there it goes. But yeah, the rookies were all able to get in there. Quinshon Junkins, Harold Fannin. It looks like Harold Fannin has the runway for next year. I think David Njoku has been released from the team and is looking to move on somewhere else.
Which is a big
Um,
shock. Like I really thought he was gonna be a
like the
Browns.
one-two
I
punch
thought he was gonna
there. I mean,
finish out there.
yeah, I think he really liked being there too. I don't know if maybe, I mean, I guess maybe Harold Fannin coming in would probably scare anybody. He's looking like a real
Ay.
a real tight end, a real tight end. I think he's more of a pass catcher than a blocker, but
Yeah,
hopefully they have somebody that can come in there and take that blocking role. We've seen a lot of 13 personnel this year, 12 personnel, so they're going to need some tight ends that can block. But I love their rookies, and that was kind of the optimism for me. I think that the stuff, whatever you want to call it, going on at quarterback is interesting. I don't think Shadur is your guy for the future. I don't think Dylan Gabriel is the guy for your future either. Listening to a CBS Sports podcast the other day, I kind of got the feeling from what they were saying that are they're kind of feeling out Deshaun Watson as the starter this year. That it'll be a quarterback battle between
and that's
Deshaun
ridiculous,
and
man.
Shadur.
That's
Yeah, I don't
ridiculous.
think that he should be on a football team anymore, but I think that they're giving him a lot of money, and so they're going to try and do it. I think that's a mistake on their part. We'll see how it ends up going, what they end up going with. But yeah, I gave him a C for this year.
I was a lot harsher. I gave them an F. I mean, this is now I'm as I as I look back at this list, I'm very hypocritical with my standards of like what I said I would grade them on, and I feel like a lot of this was emotionally charged. I recorded this late at night, or I wrote this down late at night, and um, as I was looking back at these teams, I I can't help but feel bad for Miles Garrett. Guy just broke the single season sack record, and they only got 5 wins. It was all for nothing. They're just wasting one of the greatest defensive talents ever, potentially the greatest defensive player ever. We'll see how the dust settles at the end of his career, but when he has a season like this and all you can manage is 5 wins, um, and it goes back to how this organization is run. They made an all-in move for Deshaun Watson, paid him $250 million years ago, hasn't gotten a full season out of him since. And I will say that their draft outside of their two quarterbacks that they took two long shots on was phenomenal. But the fact that they drafted two quarterbacks in this class after drafting Gabriel first, and then they went out and got Shadura. It felt like they were pressured into picking that. Like Stefanski didn't want him, or something was going on there between the head coach and GM, and it resulted in Stefanski getting fired. They were just never on the same page, and it showed a lot. This team, I don't know. I gave them an F. I was really harsh on them.
A justifiable.
And
I've
Judy
I
sucks is
do.
also something I wrote.
Judy sucks. He does kind of suck. And Isaiah Bond's not helping much there on the receiving end either. So hopefully they can have a better season next year. I like just when the NFL is good. Like I like when there's a lot of teams that are good. So you'll hear me say like hopefully they're better next year. 'Cause I really do hope that a lot of these teams are better next year. I like seeing high competition. Like whenever the all the like Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams are all in the playoffs, and it's like, okay, we know one of these teams are winning it.
Yeah.
I think it, obviously Seahawks fan in the crowd here, so we know that he likes that.
Yep.
But I kind of like whenever there's when it's a little bit more unknown and we get to watch some fun football. But we'll go ahead and move on to the New Orleans Saints. What did you give them, Helaman?
I gave them a C. I wrote that they took a flyer on Shuck, who really rose up in draft stock in the combine. Older guy, but he proved that he can lead a team to wins. If you're a Saints fan, you wish you started him sooner. Um, but even though Rattler, I will say Rattler, he was pretty solid. Like I don't think he was
Yeah,
terrible.
I
He was
was
very underrated.
slightly confused whenever he got benched.
Yeah, because he was
I mean, it
playing
ended up
decent.
working.
He was playing decent for a guy that you have no expectations of. He was playing all right. And but it obviously proved out to be the right move because Shuck looked
Mhm.
better. Um, but Kamara's probably leaving, which and if that means he's leaving, he's probably done with football. As you said, he would be sipping pina
Yeah,
colada and in Cancun. But
good.
um, their defense also really surprised me. They peaked at the right time towards the end of the season, and they ended up determining the the last seed of the playoffs in the NFC South, or yeah, NFC South. Um, Kellen Moore is a great offensive mind. Olave, I wrote that when he's healthy and not receiving hot pastrami on rye over the middle of the field from Rattler or Carr, he is also elite. And I really like the Kelvin Banks pick as well. And I think that Chuck will take the Saints as far as they can. It's all on him. I think.
And what? Sorry, I missed your grade.
C C.
C. Okay. I gave them a B minus. They're one of the
Yeah,
teams where I went a little bit
that's
on
fair.
the. I didn't give very many minuses or pluses, but
Yeah, I didn't
this
as
was
well.
my. um, like you said, I think that they showed a lot of promise. If you're a Saints fan, like you said, Helaman, you hope that Tyler Shook is the guy for the next couple of years. I think he can be. He is on the older end, so how long he will be your guy, and how durable he is, I guess is still a question. But I think he can be the guy, and I think you have some young guys there. Chris Olave is still on the younger end of his career, I would say, barring another major concussion or major injury. You have the offensive tackle Kelvin Banks that they drafted that I think played very well. He had his best game of the season against one of the top defenses in the league in Denver, and so oh my gosh,
It's in the house.
that I pressed the wrong button, but that's okay. Yeah, I think that they have a lot of promise. I think they've found their guy, and so I ended up giving them that B minus.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like I was a little low on them considering how much praise I gave them. But I do think that they have a bright future. It's all on Chuck though. And I think we'll see this a lot more, just because of the state of the NCAA. A lot of older prospects coming into the draft as quarterbacks. So I feel like Chuck is one of the few that are going to
Mhm.
be that
A
role
lot,
model.
a lot of GMs are even encouraging some of these players to go back. So, and we can't give them too much flack when they come into the league a little bit older. Whenever they're getting pressured to have that experience
Yep.
coming into the league.
Yep.
I mean, look at Ty Simpson, someone that could be drafted very highly this year if he had more experience.
Yep.
But just the one season is scaring a lot of the GMs, a lot of coaches from wanting to have him on their team. So
I wouldn't be surprised if he went. Like, if you told me the Jets took him, like, I really wouldn't be surprised at whatever 3 or 2. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't. I think it'd be terrible, but I wouldn't be surprised just because of how weak this class
Yeah,
is at quarterback.
absolutely. Yeah. We're moving on to another very rough season here in the Kansas City Chiefs. They finished the year 6-11. I'll go ahead and give you my overall grade. I give them a D. This was extremely disappointing. Not at all what we expected out of Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid coming into this season. I think that we expected, a playoff team at the minimum, and they weren't even able to make it into the playoffs. Um, in a division with the Los Angeles Chargers, who had 29 different offensive
Yep.
line combinations
Yep.
throughout the season. So I thought it was pretty disappointing. We hope that Mahomes is healthy going into next year, and hopefully Kansas City doesn't fall for the bait and sign Tyreek Hill. Um,
Ooh.
he actually, I think it was just on his live stream. So Tyreek Hill streams on Twitch, and in his live stream, I believe last night, he said that he's going to have another surgery that he has not had yet. So we might not see Tyreek going into next year on a team. He might be done,
Oof.
needing this next surgery. But yeah, I ended up giving the Kansas City Chiefs a D.
I was a little bit more harsh, and I know that Patrick Mahomes was injured, but before he was injured, this team was never serious. I gave them an F. This was one of the most bet on, if not the most bet on teams in the league, and they have a top 10 pick. Travis Kelsey could not catch a cold. He can't block. He can't sing. He can't act. Um, Now they did also deal with no Rice to the start of the season, but even when he came back, he produced. But their offense still was just very stagnant, and I think that's to do with Matt Nagy. His scheme has just proved to be dated, and I feel bad for the Giants who are going to employ him next year. Um, Nice stop running there, Mike Jackson, Seattle legend right there. But Mahomes was really playing backyard ball, had to play hero ball every single time he dropped back. His offensive line regressed. Jawan Taylor, and if you're a Chiefs fan, you're thinking that he was released as of yesterday of this recording. Um, hopefully they can replace him there, and Josh Simmons can develop, and they knock it out of the pick. And they just traded away Trent McDuffie like an hour, a couple hours before this recording, um, to the Rams. Unfortunately, had to be to the Rams, but they gave up a the 29th pick in this draft, a third rounder in this draft, a third rounder next year, and a fifth rounder next year. Um, so they get more draft capital for a guy they probably were never going to pay anyways. It just had to end up going to the Rams. Um, it'll be very interesting to see where the Rams go next year. This is
Yeah.
very upsetting news as a Seahawks fan, but it's a great move by the Rams and by the Chiefs. I think this is one of the few scenarios where it's a win-win. Um, yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that move
Yeah,
and that trade?
I like the move. I think that the Rams addressed obviously a need. We look at last season, and they're in a division with some good wide receivers, so they needed someone to be able to stop all that from going on. Um, that was a terrible throw, Jordan Love. Thank you very much. Uh, Yeah, I think it's a good move. Like you said, it's one of the few moves that I look at it, and I think that's pretty mutually beneficial to both teams. The Rams needed it, and the Chiefs are in a little bit not a rebuild mode, but they're resetting, I guess would be a better way to put it. Trying to find some help
Go Coker,
for. No, don't do it.
go Coker, go!
No.
Holy Cross
It
legend.
trying to find a weapon for Patrick Mahomes to use this upcoming season that isn't a screen route receiver,
Yeah,
or I guess people call them Mickey Mouse receivers. I hear that used a lot for
yeah.
Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. Um, so yeah, like I said, mutually beneficial. I think that both the teams will benefit from it. The Seahawks will not benefit from it,
Nope,
unfortunately for you,
nope,
Helaman.
nope.
But that division keeps getting stronger.
Yep.
We'll move to Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Bengals this year, a rough season as well. They finished the season 6-11. I end up giving them a C. Joe Burrow got hurt very early on, and Joe Flacco comes in traded to him by a division rival, and the narrative would seem to make you think that Joe Flacco kind of fixed their problems, but I think he just made them not a terrible team to watch. He was fun. He made sure Jamar Chase was getting his targets. That 21 target game with Jamar Chase, obviously something that was I mean, watching that game was just awesome. Oh,
What?
Christian,
What?
Christian Watson, get
What
out!
in the world? What in the world?
Let's go, Christian. There we go. Um,
Goodness
yeah, their
gracious.
defense was, I mean, maybe the worst defense in the NFL. If they're not the worst, then the second worst for sure. Um, I mean, they have just recently this last week released their defensive end Trey Hendrickson, so the defense is getting even worse. I don't know what they're thinking there.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I don't know if they have the money to pay him.
yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow asked for him to re-sign all of his guys, and now they're in a little bit of a pickle with their money. So um, Joe Burrow also seemed well. I don't know if you had a better read on what's going on with Joe Burrow at the end of the season. Like he just seemed kind of depressed, talking about how like maybe he just didn't enjoy football as much anymore, and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he was like
Some.
putting some really cryptic stuff out into his interviews and his podium. So
Yeah.
I don't
Something's
know,
going
man.
on behind the scenes, for
Yeah,
sure.
it was a weird season for the Bengals and not a good one.
Yeah. I gave them an F. I was a lot more harsh on this team, and it's for the fact that even though Burrow was injured, he came back into the season like he did the season before. Or no, yeah. But he came back into this season, and they still had a chance to make it into the playoffs in a season where the Ravens were down, the Steelers were the Steelers going 10-7, and the Browns sucked as normal. And you still have this duo in Chase and Burrow, and you can't make the playoffs in this kind of year. If you can't make the playoffs in this kind of year, what what hope does your future have? Um, One of just the worst owners in the league, the cheapest owner in the league, if not. Sell the team. The defense is horrible, as you said. The offensive line is horrible, and I just, if you're a Bengals fan, I don't really know where you go from here because they feel like the Cowboys of the AFC. They have all this offensive um, prowess and talent, but just nothing on the other side of the ball, and it'll just hold them from being a contender
Mhm.
until they get serious on that side of the ball. So
Yep.
F.
Well, there we have it. We'll go to the Miami Dolphins, who finished the season 7-10. They were a team that I don't think was expected to be very good going into the season. I think they kind of done what everybody thought they would do. They've just got a bunch of tiny fast dudes, and then Tua. Tyreek Hill obviously has that bad leg injury, which hurts the offense. The defense had a couple of good showings, but overall not what they were hoping for. They traded Jalen Phillips, did they not?
Yeah, to the Eagles
Yeah.
for a third rounder, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, weakening the defense even more there. They went on a little hot streak right there in the middle of the season, and it almost seemed like, maybe they would come back to life. They beat the Bills, and it just didn't happen for them. So, I ended up giving the Miami Dolphins a D.
I think that's fair. I was a little bit more generous to this team. I gave them a C. In my little write up I did, I said, how did they manage to get 7 wins? I really like looking at the roster. I really don't know how they got 7 wins. But Tua proved he was never worth top 10 money and that he was never really a top 10 guy. Um, Let's see. I also said that my Tua hate proved to be correct. I don't hate Tua the person. I hate Tua the player and the rep that he had. I really thought he was just one of the most overrated players in the league, and I think that that has come to fruition. Mike McDaniel was a great offensive mind, but if you've watched Hard Knocks, and he just doesn't have the personality of a head coach. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Just a little too
he's a
goofy.
different guy. Yeah,
He's a
he's a
little,
little
you
different.
know, yeah. But yeah, trading away Jalen Phillips, even though he was injury prone or injured and whatever, just I don't know if that's the kind of move you make when you're a rebuilding team. But I'm also not a GM, so it doesn't matter what I think. But get Tua off the books ASAP is what I would try to do if I'm the Dolphins. Bringing in a new culture with the defensive coordinator from Green Bay. We'll see what they do in the draft. Very interesting. I think they probably go defensive side of the ball.
Yep. We'll move to the Dallas Cowboys. They finished season 7 and 9-1 with a tie in their rematch against their former quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Um, I thought their season was overall disappointing. They had an exciting offense, rivaled the Cincinnati Bengals for the worst defense in the NFL, which is, for fantasy players, that was super nice. We got to watch. our players go against Dallas, and everybody was super excited. So that was probably the only positive I could find from it. I think the George Pickens acquisition was great. George Pickens proved to Pittsburgh that he is the guy that he says he is, which I know there were some people that believed he could be, and I was definitely one of those people. I love George Pickens, loved him in college. He's great. I'm glad to see him finally do some good things with the team. But yeah, that defense just really struggled, and you finally get a full season of healthy Dak, and you still miss the playoffs. So I give him a C.
I also gave them a C, or no, I gave them a D. Sorry, I was looking at the Dolphins. I gave them a D. I said they're just too talented of an offense to only have 7 wins. I know that the defense held them back. I know that the defense is the reason they lost games. Um, but I mean, the duo of CD and George Pickens and a healthy Dak and the resurgence of Javante Williams. Really, just they should. I don't think they should have made the playoffs or anything, but only 7 wins. Obviously, one with a tie there who could have gone either way with the Packers. But I don't know how this team only had 7 wins. Jerry Jones made one of the most interesting trades, if in probably the history of the league, trading away one of the greatest edge rushers in the league in Micah Parsons to the Packers, who has notoriously had the Cowboys number in recent years. I'm sorry if you're a Cowboys fan. And the fact that he went to the Packers is probably one of the worst landing spots that he could have gone, if not to the Eagles. But um, everybody knew that Dak was going to have great counting stats just because of the defense, because he was going to have to throw the ball pretty much every snap. Um, so I gave him a D. I don't really know if they'll be serious. Um, we'll see what they do in the draft.
Yeah. Well, next up we have the Atlanta Falcons. Helaman, where'd you go with Atlanta?
I gave them a D as well. The whole controversy a couple years ago with Penix being drafted top 10 after just signing Kirk Cousins to a multi-million, like $100 million deal, and not telling him that that was what they were going to do in the draft. Just horribly communicated there. And this is one of the few teams I feel like is actually, when you could actually say, is a quarterback away from being a real contender. Their offensive weapons are insane. Whether you're high on Kyle Pitts or not, him, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, who looks like the best running back in the league, in a very young defense. We'll get to James Pierce Jr. I'm sure you have some thoughts on him as we talked about that pick in our last episode, but him potentially never being on a football field again and being in the state penitentiary, um, even though
Yep.
he looked like the best of the two edge rushers that they drafted, and a
Yep.
defense that was peaking towards the end of the season and had them in real playoff talks. I gave them a D. It's just a disaster on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I was very close to that. I ended up giving him a C. Um, I thought that Bijan had a great year. I also agree with the fact that, Michael Penix was very questionable where he was drafted, when he was drafted, the whole um aura around that with Kirk Cousins, and now Kirk Cousins is going to be released after you pay him all that money. He is the fourth highest paid quarterback to ever play NFL football. Kirk
Yep.
Cousins is. So and he's got one playoff win. So you can succeed with, doesn't matter. You could make lots of money whether you're successful or not, kids. So
Yep.
just
Yeah.
keep on asking for money.
As long as your
uh,
agent is a wizard.
yeah. I thought that, the Drake London injury really affected the team. The Michael Penix injury
Yep.
really affected the team. And that was kind of why I went with the C. I liked their draft, and it's so unfortunate that James Pierce is going to be, I mean,
Scum
probably a
of the earth.
felon in prison. He
Yep.
I highly doubt he ever plays football again. We'll see. Sometimes these players find ways out of really bad spots.
Stefan
We'll
Diggs.
see.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll see how that
Yes.
goes. But yeah, I ended up giving him a C.
Yeah, that's fair. I feel like that's fair. Maybe I was a little too harsh on them. But yeah. Well, I'll kick it off with the Bucks here again. I was really harsh on this team just because of their division, and I understand like Godwin and Mike's health during the season. I gave them an F still, just because of how easy their division was and how it came down to the wire. Like this team's just too talented, I understand the Bucky stuff off the field. I understand Godwin and Mike. I get all of that, but this team is just too talented to have not made the playoffs, especially after how they started the season. With Baker having one of the highest odds to win MVP, he was balling, and the collapse of that team towards the end of the season is just
Got to be
insane.
studied.
And they're still somehow employing Todd Bowles as the head coach. Um, and they keep moving off of these amazing offensive minds in Dave Canales, who's now led the Panthers to a playoff appearance, and Liam Cohen in his first year going to the Jags and leading them to a playoff appearance. Like, they're keeping the wrong guy in the building as a head coach. I think he's a great defensive mind. Keep him as a defensive coordinator, but they just keep letting go of the wrong guys, and it's just a team that just should be in the playoffs, and they're not.
Yeah. Yeah, I gave them the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a D. I
Yep.
didn't go as far to give them an F. I was a little lenient on the injuries there. Baker played through injury at the end of the season, or so it's reported. Emeka Egbuka is playing through injury at the end of the season.
Yep.
Um, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans basically played none of the season. I mean, they went through a series of unfortunate events, but like you said, they are extremely talented. We hope for more and we expected more out of them, especially like you said, considering the oh my gosh,
What a form
he just
tackle.
pile drive me.
Sign that
Oh
guy to a 10-day right now.
yeah. But yeah, I thought that this was a team at the beginning of the season that could make the playoffs in that division, and they weren't able to. Carolina ends up beating them out for it, and so yeah, I
In
gave them a
dramatic
D for that
fashion.
reason.
In dramatic
Yes.
fashion. Literally last week of the season. That was a very interesting Sunday. Um,
Yep. We'll move on to Baltimore. I'll start with my ranking. I gave them a D. This is very similar to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is an extremely talented team, and they weren't able to get the job done. I understand Lamar Jackson was hurt for a lot of the year, but when he came back, even he wasn't himself coming back.
seemed
Looking at
rushed.
his, yeah, it seemed rush. It seemed like he was still a little slow. There was some times where, like, there's one play I remember his first week back. He's catching the outside, and it's one of those things where you're like, oh, Lamar is about to take off,
Yep.
and he throws it out of bounds before he gets to the line of scrimmage, and I was like, wow, like he must really be hurting or something's got to be going on here because usually he takes that and that's a first down. So
Hmm.
maybe it was rushed because they're trying to make the playoffs. They also end up missing the playoffs in dramatic fashion. But if they beat Joe Burrow on his first week back, it doesn't even get to that point.
Yeah.
They didn't have a very strong division this year either. Cleveland, Cincinnati, I mean, Pittsburgh. None of those teams were very exceptional teams. Those were teams that you should be able to beat with that amount of talent in your roster. So yeah, I give them a D.
I gave them an F. This was the team I expected to come out of the AFC this year, and the Stars. I understand that obviously the injury to Lamar hurt them a lot, but in a division where it's won by the Steelers going 10-7, and obviously losing in heartbreaking fashion as the Ravens just so often do in recent years. I'm sorry, Ravens fans. I have a couple of buddies who are Ravens fans, and I just feel bad for you guys. Like, losing on uh, a field goal kicked by the guy that you guys have been praising all off season, that you guys personally scouted, went out, watched all his games, yada yada yada. Losing like that on the road to one of your division rivals to uh, lose a playoff appearance. I mean, even with Lamar's injury, this is a team that still should have made the playoffs in this division this year. Mahomes wasn't serious. Josh Allen's wasn't a serious team this year with the Bills. Um, Burrow and Chase were never getting into the playoffs. It befuddles me that this team doesn't make the playoffs, even with the injury to Lamar. So I gave them an F. This was my pick to come out of the AFC this year, and the fact that they didn't even make the playoffs is sad.
Yeah. I guess this is going to be our trend for the next little bit. The Indianapolis Colts, we move on. At the beginning of the season, we thought that they might be one of the greatest offenses to ever play football. As far as points per drive go, they were the best offense in history through the first 8 weeks of the
Yeah,
season.
they were
And then
ridiculous.
we have the game where Daniel Jones fumbles 3 times, and everyone's like, "Oh, is he back? Is it
Yeah,
going to be like a
is he?
Darnold?" is he back, but in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Um, and he kind of pulled it back, but then we have the Achilles injury, and
Yeah.
that's when everything really went downhill. They go on this insane losing streak. Jonathan Taylor basically becomes irrelevant for the last like 5 weeks of the season. You rotate between Riley Leonard until um, good old Philip Rivers comes off the
Yeah.
couch and
Yeah.
almost has a couple of good games. I mean, it was not at all what how anyone expected the season to end for the Colts. I think Daniel Jones is. I think they're still negotiating right now, or he was transition tagged. I think
He
this
was.
last week.
Yep. He was.
Yeah, so they're negotiating there. Somebody will have a chance to offer him, and the Colts will get a chance to match. I think it's in the Colts' best interest to bring him back, and I think it's in Daniel Jones' best interest to be reasonable.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
he was he's asking for a lot of money, it seems, and he's coming off a very bad injury. So, um, my grade for the Colts was a D.
I was a little bit. I was on the opposite side of the ball here. I thought that they exceeded expectations. I really did not have any high hopes for them this year. I thought they'd be a middling team, and they ended up being a middling team. But the way they started off the season, how explosive they were, and how JT was getting MVP chance, and um, Tyler Warren was a great selection, and how they utilized him was amazing. Uh, and something that I wrote that I had a lot of respect for was the front office and how they had the balls to make an all-in move for Sauce Gardner when they realized they were in a position that they could really go on a run and they looked like they were a legitimate Super Bowl contender. They made that all-in move. They sacrificed that draft capital, even though it backfired a little. They still have him. Um, so if they can keep Daniel Jones, I'm really optimistic for this team. If they can get the same kind of production, which will be hard to bank on that coming from Daniel Jones, but I gave them a B.
Yeah.
I liked that the front office had the guts to make a move like that in the middle of the season when a lot of other teams would be shy to do that. So
Oh, I tried to jump.
thank you.
Dang,
That
I
helps me a
tried to.
lot. Well, then I'll go to the team I'm playing right now, and I went and gave the Panthers a B plus. Um, Now a lot of this comes off the back of how easy their division was. They did end up winning this division, as we all know. Um, Jalen Coker just got his head taken off. But Bryce proved that once again he can be a starting level quarterback. Is he worth the number one pick? Is he their guy long term? Who knows? I'm still a Bryce Young believer. Do I think he's a generational talent? Probably not. But Tet proved that he was worth the draft selection by them. He won the Offensive Rookie of the Year. They took the Rams to a down to the wire, and I'm in the personal belief that if the if the Panthers don't score with that much time left on the clock, I think that they would have advanced. Um, so yeah, I went B plus. I thought this team definitely over exceeded expectations.
I also gave them a B. I thought that they exceeded expectations. It was interesting slash cool to see them be the team to come out of that division and make the playoffs. Saints tried to make a run at them there at the end, but the Panthers pulled it out. Like you said, I think that Tet was a great addition to the team, and we kind of see Jalen Coker break out at the end of the year and have that great playoff performance. Even though they don't win the game, he showed that he can be a viable receiver on that team. I'm excited for the future. Like I said, I think my biggest question mark is Bryce Young. Like
Yep.
he's definitely good enough for the Panthers. Obviously, like he is the quarterback for the Carolina Panthers right now, and he is able to perform at a level that Carolina needs. They have some other questions that they'll have to address.
They
I
released
don't think
Dowdle, didn't they?
yes, Dowdle is
They
gone.
released
Dowdle's
Dowdle.
I don't know if it's like officially released, but I think it was the GM
Planning
at the
to.
combine. Yeah,
Yeah.
they told him that he has earned the right to explore free agency, whatever that means. We know these GMs always give their cryptic mess, so
Yeah.
I'm
Business
assuming
lingo.
that means he's gonna get
Yeah.
released. It's a fancy way to say goodbye.
Yeah.
So Chuba Hubbard, I think, is a good running back. I think that they're fine there. I think it'll be just on Bryce Young figuring it out and putting together a complete season. And if he can do that, I think that we might see them in the playoffs again next year.
Yep. Easy division. Anything can happen there. So yeah.
Yep.
On to the Lions.
Detroit. Yes,
Yep.
sir. Detroit. They finished the season 9-8. I gave them a B. albeit I think that they were a little underwhelming this year. Aiden Hutchinson comes back, and we expect that defense to be, world beaters. And I just hit your kicker. That's great. Um, yeah, and they just didn't live up quite to the expectation that I thought they would. I thought that this team was going deep into the playoffs. I love Jameer Gibbs. I think he's apart from Bijan Robinson, he's probably the most electric running back in the NFL. He's
Yep.
quick, he's fast. I mean, crazy acceleration. Um, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, the weapons there are insane. We kind of seen a tick up in that offense whenever Dan Campbell took over their play calling abilities, and I know they've just signed a new offensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see um, where those play calling abilities will lie this next year. I'm assuming they're going to pass them off to this new offensive coordinator at least to start the season. Maybe we see Dan Campbell take over again if it doesn't go well, but I give him a C.
I also went C. Everyone kind of knew the writing was on the wall when you lose an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator that you were going to take a step back. But the fact that these guys rallied and still went over 500 in a very very competitive division, and were competitive all the way throughout the season, just really proved that they have this just different level of grit in Detroit, and it's kind of Dan Campbell's whole mo. So the fact that they were still competitive, I didn't think they were going to miss the playoffs, but I'm not shocked that they did. Uh, so the fact that they were so competitive all season is just a merit to how the culture has changed there because of Dan Campbell. So very promising for them.
Yeah. We'll go down to our next team, the Minnesota Vikings. I feel like there's a lot to unpack here, but really there's not.
Yeah, I
JJ
agree.
McCarthy's just not the guy.
No,
Very drama-filled season. I think that they're looking for a way. I don't think that they're even expecting JJ McCarthy to be on the team maybe next year. It sounded like he might be gone. Whether that's like a release or somebody wants to make a bet on him and trade for him. I don't think that anyone at this point would be willing to trade for him, but we are looking at slim pickings at the quarterback position this year, and there's not really any help coming from the NFL draft. So maybe somebody takes a chance on him. Um, I would love to see them go out and get somebody like Kyler Murray, who was just recently
I think this is the
really.
dream spot for Murray. If I'm a Vikings fan, this is just such a this is I mean one of the greatest offensive minds in football, and Kevin O'Connell, and an elite defense that Brian
Mhm.
Flores has crafted, along with two of the greatest receiving options in the league, great offensive line, and they always have a productive run game. If they can land Kyler Murray, I think they immediately shoot up to be a contender. Um, but I give this team a C plus. They somehow went above 500, all while starting nine. Um, in big air quotes there, nine. I really don't know how they won 9 games with him. 9 wins, 9 games. I guess that's his whole thing. But JJ needs some saving, and I don't know if there's a better team for him than the Seattle Seahawks. So this is my pitch to John Schneider to go and get Justin Jefferson and save him because he is an all-time great wide receiver.
Okay,
Come to
Justin
Seattle,
Jefferson,
JJ.
Jack Smith, and Jigba. Holy
Come
cow!
come to Seattle, JJ. We'll treat you right. But yeah, C plus.
Yeah. We'll move on to Green Bay, the team that I am currently playing and getting beat with. They finished the season 9-7-1. Um, I thought that they had an all right season. Slightly disappointing from I guess their expectations at the beginning of the year was they were projected to have 10 wins and make the playoffs. They were not able to make the playoffs. Whether that was completely their fault or the fault of some strange Jordan Love play and Tucker Kraft going down there who just
Yeah.
scores a touchdown trying to pull the game back for me a little bit. Um, Tucker Kraft proved that he is a number one tight end and like a legit number one tight end at that. He has the game before he gets hurt, he had that super insane
Yeah.
breakout game,
Yeah.
crazy catch. Jordan Love legitimately threw a pass 40 yards in the air and just hoping, just praying
Yep.
that Tucker Kraft catches it and at certain points in that game.
It's
So
autographed somewhere
uh,
down there.
I think I just missed that kick. Yep.
I think you
Um,
missed like five.
I ended up I ended up giving the Packers a C plus. I think that this is another team that they miss in the draft again. They finally draft a receiver in the first round and they went for the classic 40-yard dash super fast guy and I mean we know that never works. I don't know why teams keep falling for it. It just never works out, and
Yep.
the Green Bay Packers fell for it. So
Yep.
I ended up giving them that C plus.
This was the team I thought was going to come out of the NFC. I really thought it was Packers Ravens at the beginning of the season, and when they made the move for Micah Parsons, my belief was bolstered. But this is a team that was injury riddled. But the fact that they made this trade, somehow they finessed the Cowboys. I don't know how they did it. They just continue to do it. Um, but I really thought this was going to be the team that won it all this year. But they really have no real option outside on the wide receiver side of the things without Tucker Craft. So I don't think Golden's the answer there. I don't think either of us think that he's the answer there. But yeah, this is a team when healthy I think could really make a run and win it all.
Where are they drafting this year? Do you know, Green Bay?
Oh, did they give up a first rounder? They gave up their first rounder, right?
Oh, they did for Micah Parsons. You are correct. Yep,
It was
that's why
like
I couldn't draft
it's
him.
like 19, 19? No, 20 something, 20 something, 20
Yeah,
something.
they probably wouldn't have been a great receiver option at that point in the draft this
No.
year, anyways.
Well, I mean, Omar Cooper maybe.
Maybe someone like Omar or Denzel Boston, maybe
Yeah,
Casey
something like that.
Consistent.
But yeah, we can go to the
Move on.
Steelers if you want.
Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers had another Aaron Rodgers Steelers type year. They end up firing Mike Tomlin, longtime head coach, long time great average coach, just a
Yeah.
guy that always was going to give you a winning record. As we know, literally always gave them a winning record. Um, I think it's more of the same for the Steelers this year. There's nothing to be super excited about. I mean, they don't have a very young core. They don't look like there's a lot coming in the
Oh
future.
no!
Please,
Oh my! What a
no.
punt! What a punt! Oh my gosh! I've never seen that in Madden before. In this year's Madden, what a punt!
Oh,
That's
well,
crazy.
let's see what we can do here.
I've never
Yeah,
seen.
I think that they're hiring into more of the same. Like with Mike McCarthy, I think that it's just gonna be more of the same. And um, I think it was reported today that we're supposed to get some news from Aaron Rodgers on whether or not he's going to continue playing. I think is
Yep,
the
that's what
expectation.
Rappaport said.
So we're still waiting. For Pittsburgh's sake, I hope that they just either move on to somebody else or Will Howard gets thrown into the fire. But they're looking at more of the same. I ended up giving them a C plus. I mean, they had a good record, but it's more of the same.
A good record is the record they've had for the past century. I gave them a C. 10-7. Mike Tomlin's out of the door. Rogers, I mean, he was solid. He was all right. He
Yeah.
was serviceable. Arthur Smith holds this team back in ways that words cannot describe. My hate for him burns fierce, and I don't know how he is still like calling plays. I really don't get it. Um, but I thought that this team capitalized on the fact that Lamar got injured and couldn't get going, and Lamar or Joe getting injured as well. Um, I don't know. The defense is just getting old, and their offense is just old, and they're just an old franchise. And I don't know if they'll be taken serious for a while. I mean, even when they made the playoffs, I don't think anybody really thought they would do
No,
anything.
the expectation was that they were first round exits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Move on to Los Angeles. This team is gonna get my first A, and if I could give them a A plus plus or whatever the highest grade I could give them would be, I would give it to them because what this team achieved with what they had was, I mean,
yeah,
very
outstanding,
exceptional
outstanding.
to make it into the playoffs with 29 different offensive line combinations throughout the season is absolutely just a miracle. Justin Herbert had, maybe one of the best seasons since his rookie year. He gets the legs moving a lot more this year than he has in previous years, which I thought was, you know, I hope that that's something that he continues to do into next year to help this team because it really, I mean, think if we can get the Justin Herbert we got last year going into this next year with a healthy offensive line, we might be looking at like a Super Bowl contender. So I hope that they have a healthy offensive line next year. Like I said, I give them an A plus plus. Justin Herbert is definitely an elite quarterback. They have so many weapons. Um, Oronde Gadsden kind of shows up a little bit in the middle of the year, and I believe I just saw a couple minutes ago that they just made a couple of moves. Released they have released their tight end, Will Disley. I
Oh
have
wow,
no idea who that
Seahawk
even is.
legend, Seahawk
Oh,
legend,
really?
yeah, yeah.
Will Disley has been released, and
Okay,
they waived their one of their offensive tackles.
yeah,
So
yeah. What
I'm
are the
assuming it's
team they're
probably
employing right now?
yeah they're gonna have to get rid of some of those because they pulled a couple of the practice squad. But yeah, what did you give Los Angeles?
I gave them a B plus for all the same reasons. I just wish that Herbert could have a good playoff game for once in his career, and I know it's not all to the fault of him. I mean, some of it is obviously, but I mean he is the one throwing the ball at the end of the day. But the fact that he's throwing it behind that line and all that, I give them a B plus for all the exact same reasons. And the hiring of McDaniel's is very very exciting. So
Exciting.
it will be very fun to see how they do next year. So very exciting, bright future.
Let's see who we got next. Philadelphia. I mean, they
Let
make
me kick
the
this one off.
playoffs.
I'll
Yeah,
kick
there you
this
go.
one off. This was I think this was the most popular Super Bowl favorite, just because of Howie Roseman and who they all kept, and um, this was a C for me. I know that they made the playoffs, but the fact that they got bounced in the first round by the Niners, who was, if not the second most injured team behind the Chargers, another California team, um, they just had no business being bounced out of the first round, especially by that team. So many questions were drug up this season because of their their loss in the first round. Like, is Jalen Hurts the guy? But that's kind of been the rhetoric around him his whole career. But AJ Brown might be on the move. Offensive line regressed massively, and Patullo is the scapegoat. Whether it's actually his fault for the offense's woes or not, he is going to get the blame. So, see.
Yeah, you give them a C. Okay, I gave them a B. I mean, I think that there was obviously lots of drama going on this season. Like you said, with everything that happened, their first round exit. Lots of questions arise around. Um, Not just in Herbert, Jalen Hurts. The Jays are getting me. JH combo.
Yeah,
Um, he, had a Jalen Hurts season. We seen the tush push kind of peter off at the end of the season, which I think a fresh new look to the Eagles offense if we could see a little bit less of that tush push whenever they need 1 yard.
yep,
I personally am one of the people that doesn't like the tush push. That is, I do not think that it should be banned. I do not think that we should ban plays, but
I agree.
uh, I hate the crutch that it is for the Eagles in those short yardage situations, and that it is for Jalen Hurts on the 1 yard line, getting all those touchdowns, those rushing touchdown, that rushing equity. But yeah, I ended up giving them a B.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Chicago. I think this was an interesting team. I think that they surpassed expectations. A lot of people coming into this year thought, the new head coach Ben Johnson would have them moving in the right direction, and he most definitely did. This offense started to click a little bit somewhere around, that halfway mark in the season. They started to really pick things up, look like a real offense. Caleb Williams picks up the nickname of Iceman and has these crazy fourth quarter throws, and um, we get to watch some really exciting football. They even win a couple games in the playoffs. I think it's hard to win or to give a team that won multiple games in the playoffs anything less than an A, especially a team that wasn't many expected not to be there. So I gave the Chicago Bears an A.
I also gave them an A. I mean, Caleb proved that he's that guy. And Ben Johnson proved that he was the hire that they needed. The future is bright, although with a caveat. Drew Dahlman retired as of today. Huge loss to their interior offensive line, especially when the market around um, centers is very, very few and in between for the elite guys. So I feel like a guy like what's his name, Linderbaum from the
Mhm.
Ravens. I feel like he's going to get a payday wherever he goes, just because of
Mhm.
the demand that's there. So yeah, I gave them an A. One of the greatest throws of
Oh,
all time in that Rams game.
insane throw. We'll go to San Francisco. This team makes the playoffs. They get blown out by the Seattle Seahawks. In
Yeah,
a
it was a
just
great game.
absolute beatdown,
That
absolute
was a
beatdown.
great game.
Uh, I don't think there's too much to add about San Francisco. I mean, I think they had a B season. They make the playoffs with a decent record. Um, Unfortunately, half your team is on IR, and Christian McCaffrey is touching the ball 6,000 times,
Yep.
just trying to keep you alive. I'm surprised that Christian McCaffrey made it to the season with how much they asked him to take on. Um, so yeah, I gave them a B.
I gave them a B plus because of the playoff win. I feel like Shanahan's coach of the year talks died out for whatever reason. I feel like if it wasn't Mike McDonald, I feel like it should have been Shanahan. I don't think that Vrabel should have won that. I think that was a terrible choice by the committee or whoever votes on it. But yeah, he really carried this team to a playoff win, and yeah, I'll give him props for that.
No way, Jimmy. Yeah. Okay. We can move on. I believe the next team we have coming up is the Buffalo Bills. I I think I'm going to be a little harsh here. I'm actually going to change the grade that I previously wrote down. I'm going to give the Buffalo Bills a C. I was
Yeah.
extremely disappointed throughout this whole season. They would go on. I mean, Josh Allen was the epitome of a superhero for them this year. They have nothing except for Josh Allen.
Yep.
Literally, they have no
Yep.
one to catch the ball. They have no one to rush the passer. Like they just have nothing on that whole team except for Josh Allen.
Yep.
And then we get to the end of the season, they end up losing to Denver in just like a high scoring affair. Like, when does Denver never gets into high scoring affairs, and then all of a sudden they're going to score 30 something points on this defense? Like, it
Yeah.
was it was a terrible showing in the playoffs. Then we get to after the playoff game, they fire Sean McDermott the next day. I don't think that was the right move. They say that they just can't get over the hump and that the staff that they have just can't get them there. But then they hire from inside their own organization.
Yep.
um, get up
Very
on the
confusing.
stand, and the GM basically says that the reason they drafted Keon Coleman was because of Sean McDermott, and then they play back the clips on the internet, the receipts of the GM. I can't remember his name. Brandon Bean, I think, is their GM's name. Get up there, and um, it like from the clips that they show, it looks like that was what Brandon Bean wanted. Like that was the GM's pick as well. This wasn't just the coaching staff that wanted Keon Coleman. Um, so lots of confusing things happening, and you don't make a comment like that about a
Yeah.
player that is on your team. That's just weird. That's
It's
just bad.
terrible. Terrible.
And then whenever Joe Brady gets hired, they ask him about Keon Coleman, obviously, because all this stuff is going on, and Joe Brady says, "Yeah, like we love Keon. Like the best thing that could have happened for Keon Coleman was me becoming the head coach." Like
That's
so many
that's crazy.
conflicting things going on in the Bills organization. I think they made some dumb and emotional moves. The owner walking in there and firing Sean McDermott like that. I definitely think that that was an emotional decision. I think that he made that without thinking. Um, so yeah, that's where I stand with the Bills. If you can't tell, I'm not very happy with them.
Yeah, I gave him a C. For all the same, I gave him a C plus. And I think it's mainly just because they beat the Jaguars, which I did not think they were gonna do.
Did
Um,
not, man.
and I'm sorry in the Broncos game, it wasn't a catch. Bills fans, it wasn't. Go read a rule book. It was not a catch. I'm sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. It was not a catch. But yeah, C plus. Josh Allen needs some help. But on to the next team for the Texans, I gave them a B minus. Making it to the conference championship, a game away from the Super Bowl, all while struggling with C.J. Stroud regressing and their offensive line being terrible and their run game being terrible and all of their wide receivers being injured. Um, I gave them a B minus, and that defense is legit. One of, if not the best units in the league. So I gave them a B minus as we try to hurry up towards the end of the game here.
Yep.
You have any extra
I get.
thoughts there?
I mean, all the same reasons. CJ Stroud just wasn't able to deliver at the end of the year, so I give him a B.
Yeah.
Los Angeles, the other Los Angeles team, the Rams, I gave them an A. I mean, they made a strong push in the playoffs. I love their coach. I love the everything about that team. I love the old heads making a push here late in their careers. Matthew Stafford, Devontae Adams. Everything kind of lined up right for them, and they had a good season. Just weren't able to get done at the end of the year, so I gave them an A.
I gave them an A plus. Respect when respect is due, especially with how nobody really knew what was going to happen with Matthew Stafford at the beginning of the season, in his back and all the injuries there, and how is Devontae Adams going to fit in this offense next to Puka? A plus. This team, and GM, head coach, offensive coordinators, top to bottom. This is just one of the best run organizations in football. And they are good because of it. Unfortunately, they are good because of it. And they
Hmm.
just proved it again with that McDuffie trade that we brought up earlier. I mean, when you have a championship window and being able to realize that as a franchise and realizing that you don't have Matthew Stafford for, I mean, you might have him for maybe 2 years at most, but it really feels like next year is their last year with him. So I gave him A plus all day long. They unfortunately one of the best run organizations in football.
I like it. I like it. I like it. We'll move on to Jacksonville. Big surprise this year, Jacksonville. They come in with Liam Cohen, and it seems like they're kind of figuring it out. Trevor Lawrence looks like the quarterback that he was drafted to be. Kind of, he kind of lit it up there at the end of the year, and even got to attend the honors celebration, the ceremony that they do. He received a couple MVP votes, and I think they're well deserved. I hope that they bring back their running back, Travis Etienne. I hope that they kind of keep that cast together. They unfortunately have Travis Hunter go down midseason, which is not what they wanted. But they were still able to come out as a 13-4 team, and um, they make it to the playoffs. I give them an A.
Yeah, I gave them an A plus. This was a team I was really high on coming into the season. I was really high on the Liam Cohen signing. I was really high on the Travis Hunter trading up and going and getting a guy you think will be generational, who could be, especially when you have the talent that he does on both sides of the ball. So I gave them an A plus. I really think that had they won that game in Buffalo, or against Buffalo, that they would have gone on a run and it would have been a Jags Seahawks matchup in the Super Bowl. I really don't think anyone else would have really been close. So
I like it. The Denver Broncos, probably the team that we should have saw in the on the AFC side of the Super Bowl if it wasn't for Jarrett Stidham shovel
yep,
passing balls to the other team.
yep,
I thought this team had a good year despite some of the challenges that they went through offensively, not being able to ever really put things together and almost losing to the Raiders in the middle of the year. Bo Nix looks like he can be that guy for them. I think for their sake, they hope that he is, and they're able to ride with him and keep building around him. Um, we got news today that they are apparently set to make a big splash at the running back position. That's the exact quote
which is
that they
crazy,
gave.
which is
Yeah, which
crazy to
is
me.
very interesting. We'll see what that big splash is. Some expect it to be Kenneth Walker. Why am I not
I
throwing the
would
ball? Oh,
cry.
my controller disconnected.
I would cry if that's the case.
I was
Since your
trying to throw it.
controller disconnected, I
My
see.
controller disconnected while I was trying to throw it. I was like, Jordan Love, why are you running backwards? Um, yeah, so I gave them an A. They win a couple playoff games. They get to that snow game, and I think Sean Payton kind of lost it for them there with some bad calls. Going
Yeah.
for it on fourth down,
Why
taking
not
your field goal.
kick the field goals, man? Just kick them. But yeah, I went A plus. This team, I feel like completely is another one of those ahead of schedule teams. Not as much as a team like the Patriots, which we'll talk about in just a second, but A plus. A field goal away from being in the Super Bowl. Who knows what happens then with that elite of a defense and elite offensive line? But yeah, A plus.
Oh my gosh, Jordan.
Safety. Is that the first safety on the channel?
We're getting cooked. I think it is. That definitely is.
Oh, then
Yeah.
we'll move right
Well,
into the Patriots. And this is a team obviously way ahead of schedule. Um, but came into the season
what the
expected to
heck is
be
going
what?
on?
What did you just? Where did you kick that?
I like it was straight down the middle. Like no, I don't know what's going
The
on.
wind is
Okay,
blowing real hard today.
apparently.
But yeah, A
Um,
plus. This team's way ahead of schedule. Drake May immediately thrust in the MVP discussion in his second year. Defense was elite. Vrabel is a head is a it was definitely worthy of being a head coach of the year candidate, but I don't think he should have won it. But definitely one of those top guys that should have been in consideration. So 29-13. Um, yeah, that's all I gotta say. And Stefan was released today as well. Released
yep.
right into the
Jet
penitentiary.
Yeah, I like you said, they're very ahead of schedule, very young team. I'm hoping for a Travion breakout season next year. He's a great running back. Watching the few chances we got to watch him was super explosive, super awesome, super cool guy. Um, yeah, I'm way ahead of schedule. I hope that they address wide receiver in the draft this year, or they sign somebody out of whether it's a free agent wide receiver or trade for someone. Um, I'm excited to see what happens with this. Their schedule next year is set to be one of the hardest in the NFL, so they have a
Yeah.
chance to silence all that doubt that they got this year, and really show that the Patriots are back. So we'll move on to Seattle.
I mean, this is obviously an A-plus team. Nobody expected this team aside from delusional Seahawks fans like myself to win the Super Bowl. But I mean, honestly, I don't even think it's that crazy to say that this team was expected to be a Super Bowl favorite. I mean, if you've been watching Seahawks football the past couple of years, they they have been so close to turning the edge and being a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And this year they put it all together, and it's really thanks to John Schneider's mastermind. Mike McDonald is definitely the hire there that made this possible. This defense and this team was just so close all year long. JSN got the offensive player of the year. K9, my favorite player in the league, finally got some recognition. Won the Super Bowl MVP. John Schneider is the greatest GM in the league. Hardest playoff schedule, best defense, and the best team in the league.
Yep. I mean, what more can you add to that? They won the Super Bowl in spectacular fashion. It was a little slow there at the beginning, but the end of the game kicked off, and we got to see some fun, exciting plays, and we got to see that defense really put the pedal to the metal on the Patriots. They really had their way with pretty much everybody they played this year on the defensive side of the ball. They were just it seems like they're bigger and faster and more physical, and so um, they're easily, I think, I mean, well deserving of the Super Bowl, best team in the NFL, and I think that they're set in a position as well with their draft picks this year and the picks they have upcoming. I think that they'll be able to really do something with it, and we might even see them repeat next year.
Not to mention they have top 6 or 7 cap space in the league.
That's
So
insane.
very interesting to see. And obviously, I think a bunch of that's going to Witherspoon and JSN re-signing. And if we can manage to keep K9, that's probably where it'll all go. But yeah,
Yeah.
so
K9 he's on the open market right now, is he
he
not?
is on the open market. We're not franchise tagging him, which I mean, it could be a sign of like respect, like you've done so much for this
Yeah.
franchise, go get your bag kind of thing. And I obviously think we're gonna make a deal with him. I just don't know what it'll be yet. So, um,
Nice.
as we wrap it up, let's see what these stats look like. If we can get to it. Did you have
No,
anything else you wanted to add?
no, I think that was it. We're excited to be here on the podcast. Excited to be talking about football. We say it every week. We love football. We love sports. At all levels, NFL, college. This is something fun that we've always dreamed of doing. Just we're gonna sit here and play Madden, and I'm gonna get my butt kicked, and we're gonna talk about football. It's
Hey, this
a
one was
weekly
close
tradition.
though. This one was
It's
close.
the it's the closest one so far, and believe it or not, guys, we did play a game off camera that we didn't finish a
Yeah,
couple of days,
yeah.
and we got to the third quarter, and it was a tie game. That's about as close as it's gonna get for me to Helaman.
Yeah,
So
we actually had to re-record this episode because we got disconnected in the middle of our game, and he was ahead. He was up by 3. So
I
who
think it was
knows what
tied.
was it?
I think it was tied. Yeah,
Okay,
but as far as recording goes, I don't think I might never win a game of Madden. It might just be my
okay.
curse.
All right, that's all from us. We'll see you next episode.